got our first house on Long Island, and it was great. One of the things as a child is that I prayed and I kept it always, and he wasn't able to marry me until he committed that I would adopt a child, whether the children of our own. It was something that I had in my heart that I wanted to do. I had a love for the needs of what's out there. So he did do that. And so we moved into this house, and we were in the process of adopting 2 Korean children. And there was a time where the gas shortage and expense was a big thing, that you had to run long lines to get gas. And he worked in Nassau County as a police officer, and finally decided, maybe we should move it in closer to the city, not city, but the county, closer county to where he works. And we went to sell that house, and the people who moved in, who was buying the house, backed out of it. So we had 2 mortgages, and we got into financial bind, and so we had to let go of that adoption. However, my mother-in-law went in the newspaper, and she says, "Kathy, look at this. For the foster carers in social services, they are looking for homes to place adoption kids." And I said, "Well, that's what I'm going to do." So we followed through, and we went through the whole process. And instead of getting a baby or a little child, there was a teenage boy that his father was killed as a police officer, and because my husband was a police officer, it would be a great fit. However, he was using drugs, he was a mess, and I was only 22 years old, and he was 17. So it was real hard to kind of, but I helped, and I did what I needed to do, and he loved music, so I got his first guitar, and he played the guitar. Eventually, he actually played for a very high, popular, as a backup guitarist to a group. It was I forget the name of the group. It was something like, it wasn't Grateful Dead, but there was something that good. But I had to actually have him removed from my home. I had another foster child come in. His name was Bobby, and he had long hair, no curly, and it goes around his face, and it was he was in 9 foster homes, and he was very racist, and they just said, "Can you just take him for Christmas?" I go, "Okay, I'll take him." I fell in love with him. I fell in love with this kid. I just knew it, and he fell in love with me. So he had a right why he wanted to be in this home, and I had to say why I wanted him to be in my home. And he came in my home, and he grew. He was part of our family. We had many other children, someplace that were supposed to be adopted, and then they wound up taking things out. These kids out for different reasons. Like it was Tito and Evelyn. They were from Puerto Rico. And I was supposed to adopt them, and then his mother was in prison, and he never even met his mother. He was 6, she was 14, and Christmas Eve, there was a knock at the door, and his mother came with her, an officer who she was having an affair with, and they gave back her kids and moved to a different county. Evelyn tried to reach me, and she says, it was horrible what was going on, and I tried to fight to get her back, but the system stunk. So what do? I fought back. I didn't get them back. But what I found out is they kept kids in foster care that were adopted. Because why? Because the state gets money and the federal government gets it. I went nuts, and I did my research. This is something I didn't know. I never looked at that credit for myself. It only took years later when I seen the injustice, I just had to go and I had to take care of it. And I did. And it went on the news, and I proved it. And also I spoke to an adopted group to say, hey, some of the things they're saying is that one of the things is they keep them in foster care is that what happens to something if they find that they have some other mental condition or some biological thing that's not good or whatever. And they said, that's not true. We're adopting people from India. We're adopting people from there. And so also that was put in there. But there was an adoptive attorneys there. And they called me up. And he said, there's a pregnant woman. She's due any day.
She's interracial. Her father's black, and the mother's Italian. And that was my Kathleen. I went to get her when she was 3 days old, and I held her in my arms. And I got in the car. The sun was shining, and I felt the presence of the Lord. I felt it. And I'll go on with Kathleen, but something you also need to know that God did into my life in those early years with my children. My son Billy was born and had excruciating headaches at 4 years old. He started losing his hair, and they thought he was getting diagnosed as brain tumors. And I went all over and trying to do all these tests. And then down the road there was a doctor, very old doctor, and she says, so I took him there. And it turned out to be extreme allergies, and with all the medication and everything else, he was fine. Then I had my son Christopher, and he was born, and he kept having sores all over him, like he had ear infections, and he was only like 3 months old. And I'd go to the doctors, and they'd give me this, and then and this, no, there's nothing wrong. But I knew something was really, really wrong. Something was wrong with my baby. And I met this other doctor. She was from India, and I told her, I am not a new mother. I know something's wrong with my child. And he was diagnosed. He did a lot of stuff. He was diagnosed neutropenia. Neutropenia is that when you have your white blood cells, and that fights infection. And sometimes you have your own antibodies that stop it and go against the neutrophils. But with Christopher, he never made neutrophils. So he had a life expectancy to live about 6-7 years old. When he was 4 years old, his body started making neutrophils, and they didn't know why. They felt that it just couldn't happen. This doesn't happen. You can't make them when you don't have them. And my son is alive today, and he's vibrant, and he's, everybody heard of Chris. Everybody knows Chris. So another miracle that God gave me in my life. And as I moved further on, as the years went, my mother went with me, with Chris, to the hospital once a week, sometimes several days. And like I said, I was very close to my mother. And then she developed breast cancer during that time. But she was supposed to only have about 2 months. And I told her, God told me, Mom, you're going to have a little more time than that. You're going to be okay. She had 2 more years to live, and I went with her, took care of her at the very end of her life. And she did pass away. But she was, and still is, my best friend. She was a wonderful woman, and I have people on Facebook from when I grew up as a child. And they're close to me, not because of who I am, but because of who my mother was. She was a woman who went and knew the neighbors. If they needed help, she was there. When somebody had depression and was suicidal, she was there. And they never forgot that my mother was an amazing, loving, powerful woman. And we had a nun that was living in my grandmother's house. We all lived in the same area, so to speak. And she's retired. We went to St. Bernard's Church. It was right behind my grandmother's house. She was retired, so she was living there, Sister Dorothy. And she got close to my mother. And when my mother died, she came to us and she said, in all my life, and she's like in the 80s, right? I've never met such a Christ-like woman in my lifetime. That even though she didn't go to church, she had faith in God, and she trusted in Him, and her love showed through everybody in that community. And to hear her say that was really it was a healing thing for me. That she was such a so much like her. And then through the years, even my own sisters, they say, Kathy, you're most like your mom. You're most like your mom. She was a good mentor, and that's an honor to me. So let's go back to where I was going with my journey. We were going through a divorce. My mother died, and 2 years later my father did, and our marriage ended. and I was falling apart between losing my mother, my father, and I have a friend, Ruth, who lived down the road, and she had foster kids. She adopted, I adopted, and she moved back to Idaho, so I went to visit, and I belong in Idaho. I've always dreamed of being a country girl. I dreamed of having a ranch or having a farm, and I have 12 kids. I did have 22 foster kids over that time, by the way. Always had 8 to 10 kids. Gotta stay in the routine, and to get it. And I used to take them to the ocean too. So I'm backtracking. I realize that, but sometimes the thought comes up, and I need to bring it back. It's important to the story of my life. And so I packed up my kids, my 5 kids, a guinea pig, a baby squirrel, that was my oldest son's little trying to keep it alive. We loved animals. And my coffee pot and my microwave. In my little Toyota, we drove all the way here, and I bought a house in Eagle, and it was 5 acres, and I got horses, cows, chickens, rabbits. What else did I get? Pigs, Patty Pig, right? Patty Pig, and Bruno Pig. And it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And then I wind up marrying my Ruth, her husband was my husband. I married him, and he had this land out here. He had 480 acres. And if I moved out here, we'd build a house, and he gave me a lot of all these things that we were going to do together. And before that, though, he is a commercial fisherman. So while my kids would go back, I was living in Eagle still, and my kids would go and visit their dad in New York, I went commercial fishing. And let me tell you, going out in that water and working hard is unbelievable. So the first job I had on that boat was the ropes, the bottom. You have a seine, and there's corks on top to keep it floating, and then the net comes down, and you have this heavy lead line. So as you bring the fish in, you're grabbing that line, and you're swinging it, and I remember, like, one of the big tenders every night when we unload the fish said, "Hey, if you want to take a shower on this boat, we can," because we had a makeshift shower on his boat. So they're great. And I remember just, going like this to comb my hair, and I had muscles. Like, I was like, oh my goodness. And then as the different years went on, I did the corks, and I realized I had the hardest job on the boat. This is crazy. I was doing the hardest job. And so it was really, the first year we went, it only had 2 days off in 6 weeks. It was 8 weeks where we were constantly on the water. You didn't walk on land. So when I got off the boat, and I had sea legs, and I was like trying to walk all over the place. So it was so hilarious, but it took a long time. And then the other years that I went up, we had a catch. It was a huge catch. We knew we were going to deck load it. And let me tell you, there's a lot of money, thousands of dollars that happens with this. So there was windy out, that was blowing like crazy, and we started to have a storm. It was 10-foot waves, 70-mile-an-hour winds, gusts at higher than that. And we're trying to not do anything but get all that fish in, get it loaded. And so when you go around with the net, in the netting, there's a little boat that comes around and makes a loop and it goes under. So, and then they start with the hydraulics. You pull it up, so it's like a pouch. It's kind of like you seal the bottom, and then you start bringing that fish in. So when I went and I lifted up the rope, and what happened, and to let the boat go through, I was catapulted out into the ocean in the storm. And it took me further and further away from it. When I went down in the water, I was with big wet, boots, and I kept sinking lower. And the water's freezing. You can't be in that water for any length of time because you will die from it. So in my mind, I was praying, and I heard my mother's voice say, "Kathy, you know what you need to do." And so I came to the surface, and I was struggling really, really hard to try and swim in. And she goes, "Kathy, What did it teach you? Ride the wave and rest. Ride the wave and rest. And I finally got close enough to the boat to get the round, the rescue thing, and I brought it up. And then when I got close enough to the boat, they grabbed me by my raincoat, and they yanked me up, put me down on the boat, and said, "Now get working." Right. Hey, there's $30,000 coming in or more. Get working. Filling up. I was freezing, shivering, and I did it. And then after we got loaded, we went and, you go to a hot place where you can kind of go away out of the storm and stuff like that. And, but that's another miracle, because I should have lived through that. Not in that water, not in that situation, in the freezing. I don't know how long I was in that water and how long it took me to get there, but it was long. And so there was other things that, up in Alaska that I absolutely loved, though, because I'm a water person, and there was a lot of adrenaline in that whole life thing. And but after 4 years, we moved out here, and I did my last time in Alaska, and that's when they had the oil spill, and we were cleaning up the oil spill. And so I moved out here and getting ready and started to disc the place up, and we had 55 cows. I had several horses, because I love horses. And then what happened was, my husband, Wayne, at the time, he was going up the hill. I was supposed to go with the tractor it was disked to smooth it out, and he had another tractor that was putting down seed. And as I'm going up the hill, this land is not as flat as you think it is, and it went up steep the hill, and we started digging in, and the tractor started to come back. And it's in my mind, one of the people out here, a rancher that we know, he's passed away, but he was out here, and his father got killed on the tractor. He says, "Kathy, if anything happens, this is what you do." And so Wayne came around and figured, okay, there was a harrow, maybe if I pull it up higher, and it wouldn't, all that dirt wouldn't build in there. But when I got my foot off the brake, what happened is it just made it go more like this. So I jumped off the tractor as it was coming over, and it hit me on the side and crushed my pelvis. And while I was laying on the ground, I realized it was bad. I could feel the blood, just the warm blood going through my abdomen, and I didn't even know if Wayne got killed from it, because he didn't come around. And I said, so I yelled Wayne, and then he came around, and I said, you need to go call 911. This is bad, because I didn't have blood on me. He didn't think I was bad, and I said, this is bad. I need a lifeline out here. And so he came up and he tried it. We just got bones here. We didn't even have bones out here. We didn't even have an address. So they couldn't find me. They had the bus driver, hit CB radio, and then there's a place towards Fairview. In the place where they have not the telephones, but the different ways of reaching people. So they were talking back and forth from what I said. This is what they tell me later. And then my kids had a half a day, and when I had a day, I had a roast in the oven. Figuring, okay, I'll throw that, and then when the kids come home, they'll have something to eat. And so I lay there on the ground, and the ambulance came, and I started praying aloud, and they told me that I prayed aloud, because I met later on, and I just prayed, God, please let me live. Please let me live. I want to raise my kids. Please let me be with my kids. I love my kids. And then the last thing you lose when you're dying is your hearing. And I heard them say, we're losing her. Well, her veins are collapsing. I'm bleeding out. And then my prayer, I changed, and I said, God, take care of my kids. Please take care of my kids. And when I did that, that was a complete surrender to the Lord, Father God, Jesus Christ. When you give all of yourself and trust in him. Okay, take care of my kids if you can get me home. Then all of a sudden, I felt the presence of the Lord. It was so beautiful. It's hard, and any time you read anybody a near-death thing, if they go to heaven or not, they all say the same thing. There's a peace that you can't ever imagine. And you feel the presence, the glory of the Lord. It is amazing. And he took me through my life, all the way through my entire life, all my ups and downs and imperfections. And he took me through that. And it was probably 5 seconds maybe, but he took me through my life. And then the helicopter came. And somehow I kind of woke up out of it, so to speak, and I said, oh, you're going to take me for a ride. I made a joke, saying, always a joker, right? And yeah, here I'm dying, I'm making a joke, right? They get me on the helicopter, and I decode. And they got me away, okay, and then in the hospital, and they didn't know how to fix me, to be honest. I remember waking up in the ER and looking up and having all this blood come in, and this, what I thought was, did you check for HIV in that? Would you believe I did that? I was like, because I was big at that time, right? And then I must have coded them because I was gone again. And then I was in intensive care, and the doctor came in, Dr. John Bishop, I'll never forget him, because he's a lot of things that we got close about with him. And he said to me, this is vital, I'm here. He said, came in the morning and he said, Kathy, we're going to fly you to Seattle. And then he came in later on because guess what? I was able to get a team here because I need a team to fix me. I was crushed. I mean, I was bad. And he says, do you want to do it now? You want to wait? And I says, just do it. And I had people praying over me. I worked for Port of Hope, gynecologist counselor, and for 4 years, while I was living in Eagle, and part of the time I was living here. And all of them came, and they surrounded me and then my family, and they prayed over me. And then I went into surgery, and the doctor came out and came to my children, and they said, Mom is going to close her eyes on earth and open them in heaven. I was not expected to live. I coded again, but it didn't die. And I'm here to say, God is amazing. But it didn't stop there. It gets even better. When I got out, I was in the hospital for a month, and then a week I stayed with my sister-in-law, Bonnie, who helped me. And my hair was caked with dirt, and they didn't clean it. So when Bonnie came in, she goes, can I please clean her hair? Just like, she was trying to fix me up. And it was so sweet. But in the hospital, I still had, that presence of God stayed with me. That love stayed with me. And when I was in the hospital, God gave me a vision. And when I get visions, it's not like I have a dream. This is different. It's different. And what he said to me, Randy's going to come today. It's Easter Sunday. By the way, I was born on Easter Sunday, and they called me Bunny. That says a lot, Easter Sunday, right? Tell Randy that he's going to go to India in 5 years, and he's going to preach to thousands. And to tell him that his wife, who's not a believer, that she will become a believer, and that he would have his own church someday. And he didn't say anything. And in my mind, I'm saying, this is my relationship with God. Are you kidding me, God? This is me. You want me to tell him that? He's going to think I'm crazy. A lot of those things, like in the Catholic Church, you don't, in other churches you speak aloud, but you don't do that. You're very reserved. So I'm thinking, okay. So Randy comes, and I says, Randy, I have to tell you something. He goes, okay, tell me. So I told him. He didn't say anything to me. He didn't say a word other than, Kathy, I'm going to bring you lunch, and it's Easter. I'm going to bring you Easter dinner. So okay, and he left. He went, see God, see that, And sure enough, was close to 5 years. I figured, okay, this is just not gonna happen. This is not gonna happen. He calls me up and he said to me, Kathy, I'm going to India. I'm going to India. And I'm gonna go to speak and preach in India. And he did exactly. He did get his church in Eagle. And his wife did become a Christian. But it doesn't stop there. God gave me so much more through this. He gave me the vision of this chapel, the vision that this place was going to be used for healing, to rest, to learn about Christ, forgiveness. And I didn't know what all that was, but I knew it. In that part, I wanted able to get, after a month I got out of the hospital, and when I was home, I could barely walk. I had a walker or a wheelchair, and then my daughter Jessica had a school thing going on, and my sister Patty took me with my wheelchair and brought me to her class where they were having like some kind of reception and stuff, and life went on. And what happened was things weren't the same. The dreams that were shared with me wasn't going to be, and I knew it. That marriage really turned bad. And I don't want to say anything in particular because family is here, and he just passed away, so I want to be respectful and loving in that manner, because there was many good times too. But some of the things changed certain things for me, and we did divorce, and I got 20 acres. And for 5 years I said, I'm going to finish raising my kids. I worked for the Department of Corrections. First worked for the Juvenile Corrections, then I got a job in, Randy said to me, hey Kathy, I started going towards the end of the summer. I don't know how I did, but it was hard. I had to go to maximum security to do program evaluations and for substance abuse. And so I walked up there, and it was like really hard for me to do this and stuff like that. And he says, something, Kathy? They have an opening here for Department of Corrections. Oh, so I said, really? So I put in for the Department of Corrections, and what I did is I was a program coordinator for the state, and eventually traveled a lot. As my kids got a little older, I was traveled a lot and set up programs, did program audits, worked with the inmates. 4 months I set up a program, and my inmate workers were murderers and terrible sex offenders and stuff like that, but that's the people that give you the lifers that work with me. And while I was working there, there was a graduation that they successfully, they would help me with presentations and stuff, right? And at that time, there must have been about 200 inmates in that room with me alone. And they're sharing all the stuff, and a fight breaks out. And I was alone. And the ones, either they're gonna forfeit you and your meat, so to speak, but they came around me, the people that were my inmate workers came around me as they protect me as I walked out, trying to find the security guard who was not there. But that was another incident that, once again, that was really scary. But I succeeded in that career, and I often wonder, like, did it make a difference? Would anybody stay sober? Because it's the work that you do, and then you don't have results. So a lot of times when I came home with my kids, I put everything into my garden. You can see when you now, my garden's, I keep building it and make it bigger and make it bigger. But I could see results of your work, your effort. So it means a lot to me. And then after the 5 years, my daughter Jessica, once again, her friend Jessica, they were going to nursing school, and her father was going end of the divorce. His name was Jimmy, and he really wanted to go out to this jazz that we had nobody to go with, and would I go? And they kept asking me about this before, and I said, are you crazy? Are you really crazy? No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And I just got back driving 7 miles from Orofino, working in a prison there, and I just threw my hands up. All right, I'll go, but just tell him I'm just your friend, just a friend, and nothing's gonna happen. So after that happened, I went and we met at a restaurant, and he's kind of sitting on the outside, and he gets up, and I went a second, and went, oh no. She said, oh crap. He's cute. Oh no, I'm in trouble. And so I get in his car and his pickup, and then we went to the jazz. It was outside, and we were talking. I was surprised people would say, hey, excuse me, really, right? And so then we went to a restaurant, and all I heard him talk about was the love he had for the Lord. And I knew that was the person that I was supposed to always be with. He was my everything. He was everything to me. We had so much fun together. We'd go out dancing downtown, and then he'd go out, and he'd be on a street corner with the teenagers. And I love teenagers. So I always have this thing with teens and stuff. And he'd be like laughing with them, and next thing you know, he's talking about Jesus Christ, and they're listening to him. And I go, Jimmy, how do you do that? How do you do that? You know, and it was such an inspiration. And we did so many fun things together. We went up into the mountains and camped with our, horses, and we went down this crazy thing that we did. That we went down this river that once you go in it, you can't go for 11 miles to get out. And we had these platoons. We each had our own, and it was like real bad tough things. We never experienced with this. It's another risky thing that maybe they do, and I guess he was just as bad as me. And so we went down there, and he fell and twisted over into this waterfall thing, but it was okay. And by the time we got to the 11 miles and got out, I was really good at it. I really was. And I think back how crazy, but I also realized something was different about him. That he said to me, Kathy, I look at you, and I'm 7 years older than him, right? I don't know if I can keep up with you. I don't know. Because I had so much energy, but of course it didn't matter. But he wondered. So we had a wonderful time together. And then my daughter Kathleen, he really loved Kathleen. In fact, he told me that before anything happened. He said, I love Kathleen. I really love her. And he loved all my children. And then Kathleen was seeing somebody. She knew him for 2 months. I said, well, it's about time to take him I need to meet him. And she never really dated. Lots of guys would call her, messages on the phone. But she was, Mom, I'm having so much fun. I go, well, I don't want to. What do they want to do? Sit in front of the TV? That's not what I want. I want to be treated like a lady. I want to be. And so she met this guy, this military guy, and she got head over heels. And when it came for dinner, it was her sitting on the deck, and I could see through the window. And, the first twitters of love, and it was like, oh, that's so cute. And so then things moved fast, and, he wanted to get married right away. And I said, Kathleen, why do you have to get married right away? Things change. It's like, you can't, why? I want you to be a bride. Why don't you get engaged? He goes, well, he told me that he's deploying, which was a lie. And, so we rushed into this marriage. We went, Jessica and I and Kathleen went and bought her a wedding gown because I wanted her to be a bride. She was married by a judge. And we had pictures, and we went to a restaurant, and they gave us the whole back area. And we had with her friends and everything, we had a wedding for her, a dinner and stuff for her. And then what happened, later on, you know, the relationship, we got really rocky. She left him, she left him, went back, and I didn't know about domestic violence. And now I'm an expert at it, but then I didn't know. I didn't see the red flags. I didn't, and he was a military man for 10 years. He was in Korea. There's things you say, okay, he's, you know, he's able to take care of her, blah, blah, blah. And then they got married, and she said, Mom, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Oh, I was so gonna have a baby around here. And things got really, really bad. And he tried to hit her with a car, she said. And I said, are you sure? And he goes, Mom, I'm sure. But I didn't kind of like, was he just trying to scare you? I don't know. You know. So she came home, and then she went back with him again, and then he made believe he committed. He was sorry because she left him again, and it was a fake thing, you know. And actually, it turns out he actually met somebody at the treatment program that he was in, with this girl and stuff like that, and so they broke up. They were done, and she was staying with her friend because I said, Kathleen, try to get this, try this, and I said, you know, try to get help, you know. And I had a list of things where she could go, and then finally said, you know, Kathleen, just come home, please, just come home. And because it, you know, with her friend, she was surrounded with a friend, and she was safe. And I didn't know that. Because I didn't know he was going to harm her. And so she came home, and I was glad to have her home. And then I went to work the next day. He was at the house, and I go, what is he doing here? And he was giving her $45 support, and he couldn't mail it. He couldn't, you know. But he went and left, and I says, Kathleen, what is going on? And then he came back the next day, and I was really upset. And then he says, well, we're going to go to counseling, and I'm looking at living on base, and we're going to go to counseling the next day. You know, so I said to him, okay, do me a favor. This doesn't work. I want you to leave my daughter alone. Do you understand? Leave her alone. And said, I understand. Okay. And the next day they went to counseling. I went to work, and I remember I was at work, and I went to pick up the phone at 5 o'clock. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. This mom that's going to be, Kathleen, you know. And so what happened is that night, I was also going to, let me tell you the night before the night before she went to this counseling. When she was home, she was sleeping on the couch, and because she always wound up in the living room, and I heard her laugh, and she loved to watch, The Wizard of Oz, and then there was the other one with the school where they get the name of the Breakfast Club, and I heard her laugh, and I'm thinking, how can you be laughing? Your life is falling apart, you know? How could you be laughing, Kathleen? And that was who Kathleen was. You know, when Jessica had her engagement party, you know, at her house with Greg, and we have all these people, and all of a sudden, Kathleen's in the house in another room, and she's laughing. Everybody leaves and goes where Kathleen went. That's who Kathleen was.
You have a spider in your hair.
I have a spider in my hair.
Don't just.
Okay. This is what a daughter does. Beautiful daughter.
It fell.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, looking up, sorry.
That's love. So, so listening to her laugh, and I was gonna get out of bed, and no, leave her. She's enjoying this. She's enjoying herself. But then going back to that 5 o'clock, something was wrong, and I just, you know. So I went to have dinner at Jimmy's. And they weren't married yet, so I went to have dinner at his house and get a phone call from my brother-in-law, and that Kathleen was hit by a car. And then the reality is that they went to counseling, which was one of the worst things you could do in counseling when you're in a domestic violence situation. It excels it, and I didn't know that. I know it now. What that counselor did. Kathleen kept saying, he blows up, he just blows up. Well, he wanted to see how he blew up. So he starts aggravating Al. So Al blows up, walks out of the room, and then comes back in, and he thought everything was calmed down, so they left. And when Kathleen was, pregnant, and so she had morning sickness really bad, and she didn't have enough fluids. So they went to get her fluids, and one that evaluated her, that 9 is high for domestic violence, she had 16. And one of the things that she said in the courtroom during the thing, that counselor said, oh, she was in the afterwards, and I saw her when she was getting intravenous, and she had that big cheesy smile, and I'm like, this isn't going, what? Kathleen had the biggest beautiful smile. Everybody loved her smile. And to hear that, it was hurtful. But then I couldn't come here when the police would come in, everybody was coming out here, and I thought she was gone, but she was there for a long time. What he did is they had a fight, and she got out of the car, and she was going to go to our neighbors, because they grew up together, Dave and the neighbors across the road and stuff, and what happened is, I'm getting emotional here. So what happened is that they got into a fight on the road coming in. She was heading towards the neighbor's house to get safe, and his story, he admitted that he sat in the car on the road and watched her, lit up a cigarette, got out, got back in the car, and then proceeded to hit her just before she was able to get into the driveway, and she got thrown into the yard. The little girl, she was only 11 years old, was looking out the window and saw the whole thing. She went through trauma for years. So we lost Kathleen, and it was devastating. We had to go through all the court stuff that goes on with that, and what happened with that is it lasted. I have this thing like the Saccone and the State of Appeals. It started on 2003, and he did so many appeals that it took to 2018 before the final appeals were done. We were going into court almost annually. It didn't go away for 18 years. And at the same time, my husband died. Jimmy and I got married, and my husband died of cancer. He went in for treatment, and they made an error, and he died from it. And so there was lawsuits and practices going on that I was going on and doing that too. At the same time, that lasted almost the same amount of time. But things were going on that were beautiful in between. And that's when these people here that you see that are new to us, that they're not new. There's people here that have been with me, with Jimmy and Kathleen and my family. And they helped the dream come true, what God wanted for this place. They came and prayed, and there was my Lorraine. I loved my Lorraine. Nina's here. Lorraine was amazing. She was a best friend. I loved her so, but boy, did we clash sometimes. We would, okay, we're going to help this lady that belongs to our church, and we're going to, she's having a baby, we're going to go there, we're going to clean her house. And we're both ADHD, we're both very controlling people. And so she's doing one thing, I'm doing the thing, and finally she says, oh, little arms, stop. What do we stop? What do we stop? And she says, what are you doing? So and we laughed, and then we were painting we found a place to have a church rather than being at the city center. And what went on there is we were painting and making things. Me and Lorraine went and we painted and stuff like that. with a little clashes, and there's a picture that, oh my God, but Thora, she took pictures, lots of pictures of me and her going, with Lorraine with the mop, and me like, it was like, what now, Lorraine, what now, you know, thing. And we laughed, and then, when things were going on here, and we started having retreats, and that was beautiful, and then, Ray and Lorraine, we walk around and on this lane and said, well, what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna build a chapel? Because, you know, I did finally get money after many, many years, and I said, you know, my kid said, you know, Mom, that house is you know, it's 2 trailers put together. Mom, build a house. And I said, no, I'm building a chapel. And we walked all over the place to where we're gonna be, and I don't know, what do you think here? What do you think that? And I finally made the decision, and this is where the chapel is gonna be. And there's so many, you know, so many things with our church and our family that was there, and went along with me through always there for me as I went through all that trial and all that court stuff. And Mike Barkley, who's not here, the police deputy, he was invited, he's not able to come. He was with me through everything, all those times that every year was like 9 court hearings that we went, even in Boise. And then I had to face him again at the end. He was in the court thing, and he was saying that he had mental health. But with that, I was able to say what I needed to say as well, and all my family did to him. And there was then it went to the Supreme Court, and that was the final thing. But I had Department of Corrections showed up every time, all my friends at Department of Corrections. People from Port of Hope that I worked for those 4 years, they were there for me. And All Saints that we belong to, they were there. Every step of the way, I had people that followed me, stood with me, and I appreciate that. And that's why I want to honor all of you that are here today, because you made a life easier for me. But we also made something really big together. We did. We made, you know, we had women's retreats, so many great memories, people being saved, baptism. I mean, it was just wonderful. And then we built this chapel, and my son designed it. He put down the floor, and this is crazy, but I went to build a shed, another shed to make it into another cabin for people to stay in. And I had this thing about the chapel. I kind of mentioned it was wanting to get, well, no, tell me about, no, I want to hear about that chapel. I went, oh, well, all right, you know, all this stuff. Because not thinking that Tough Shed was going to build this chapel. Who would know that, right? That just sounds crazy, Tough Shed. And he goes, no, we do more than that. We build garages, we build, you know, we do all this stuff. And I said, okay. And before you know it, gave the money, and this chapel was built. And we had weddings here. And we had many weddings in this whole place that they're got married here. And then after Jimmy died, and Lorraine died, we kind of stopped seeing each other. We just moved on. And then I met Teresa and Bob and Thora, and we'd meet. She's a horse person, so of course I know. We had a relationship that we would meet every Sunday, and we would pray for this to happen, to have to bring people here and have services here. And it took a long time. We on Wednesdays we did the Chosen series, and we did them, and everybody, we had a good sized group and everything else. And then some dog was killing my chickens and my peacocks, and I put it on Facebook just because I took a picture of it, and so Bobby responded to me, and he's a biker, and he's a scared biker, right? He's a biker. Oh, he's probably on drugs, right? Really, I'm terrible. I labeled him. So I said, well, can you point the house out? Because I want you, so I went down to Bobby's, And before you know, we're talking there for an hour at least, maybe more, and it's like, oh my goodness, he's a really cool guy. Oh my gosh. And then another week later, he calls and he says, "What are you going to do with that chapel?" I said, "Well, what we really want is, to have a preacher and have services every Sunday." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And then he calls back again. He goes, "I got you a preacher." I go, "You what?" "I got you a preacher." What do you mean? Okay. So Thor and I met with Steve. He's not here. He's sick. He's the preacher. Steve is preaching, right? So we interviewed him, and boy, she drilled him. She did. She made sure he was what we needed, and he was stuck on scripture. And so we started having services here every Sunday, and people in the community came, and some came, some would come back, and everything else. And then more than that, we got to know ourselves even more as a community. And everything that was being done here was not only just people that came to our chapel, it was the community that came together and made beautiful things happen here. And I thank Bobby so much, because he was the one that found that person. And he's no longer doing that, but we have different people coming out up here. We even had Chris, where are you, Chris? We had Chris even do some service. I mean, he's amazing. He's an amazing little boy. And so we all do services here. And now we're going to have a pavilion that's being built, so a barbecue. So when we barbecue, we have something really, really cool to have. And that was all donations. And the church that Steve came from, they gave a beautiful donation that gravelled this place, because we used to get stuck in the mud. And we did. So where we are today, we went through a lot. I went through a lot. My family went through a lot. My friends along with me went through a lot. But they never walked away. And they're still here. And they're still here in this room. And I love you so much, all of you, for all that you've done. I thank the neighbors that are here and those who are not. They helped stop this fire. And it's the second time a fire came to this place, and it stopped at the chapel. And this time, it was burning, coming this way, and then the wind blew the other way towards my house, but did not take the chapel. And to me, that is a God's blessing, and I feel blessed. I've never been so happy and comfortable in my life as I am now. I have God with me. He showed me dreams, and he made them happen. I had cancer, and I don't anymore. So he cured me, I had surgery, but I didn't get it back. So God still has plans for me. I still have a bunch of energy, and I'm going to see things happen. And when God calls me home, God only knows what's going to happen with this chapel. It's going to grow, and it's going to grow, and it's going to grow. And I love you all, and I want to thank you for coming. I am humbled, and I am so grateful to God. So I ask you to commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. As we move through our days, it's easy to carry everything on our own. Our plans, our worries, responsibilities, and unanswered questions. We often feel the pressure to figure out things, our lives, believing that we try harder or plan better, everything will fall in its place. Yet this verse reminds us that God never intended for us to walk alone. When we commit our way to the Lord, we are choosing a place of trust in his wisdom rather than our own understanding. Trusting God does not mean we have every right answer away, but it does mean we can rest knowing that he is working even when we cannot see the outcome. God acts in perfect timing, God, guiding our steps, shaping our journey with purpose and love. Life may not always unfold as we expect, but God's faithfulness never changes. When you surrender our worries and plan to him, we make room for peace. We make room for peace, clarity, and renewed strength. I have had renewed strength through hardships and I am stronger than I've ever been. When I surrender worries and plans Him, He makes room for peace, clarity, and renewed strength. He knows the path ahead. His hands are steady and sure. Let us take a moment today to commit our hearts, our plans, our future to the Lord. May we, in assurance that He is always at work for our good Heavenly Father, we place our trust in You today. Help us to commit our ways to You and the rest in uncertain, and lead us according to Your perfect will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.